Welcome to Unbound, the podcast with Beth Curry, author, storyteller, and survivor. This is where books meet real life, where Beth reads chapters from her work and breaks free from the traditional audiobook format, diving deeper into the personal experiences, lessons, and liberation behind every page. Nothing is off limits. Let's get unbound.
Hey there, how you doing? Welcome to Unbound Season 3. I'm Beth Curry. This is episode 0, the dedication and the front matter for the other side of quiet, as well as a quick heads up on what to expect. So I've been on the fence for how to handle this season because the chapters are quite long, and of course from my perspective can be pretty heavy as well. So reading a chapter and then having my little commentary after might make the episodes a little bit longer than people are used to. All These Beautiful Things had longer episodes, and season 2, they were quite a bit shorter. I don't really know. I know that I have less chapters in this book than All These Beautiful Things, but roughly the same word count. So the chapters are longer. Anyway, I thought, maybe I'll just have some discussion or commentary in the Facebook group instead and just read the chapters. But then I realized that not everybody has Facebook and not everybody wants to join a Facebook group. And, people might still want the commentary. So I'm not really sure what to do. I guess I'll probably just do the traditional format that I've been doing, for All These Beautiful Things. And then people can control the speed at which they listen or how much they listen to, or if they want to listen to all of it. You don't have to, but if you do, thank you so much. It means a lot. Anyway, episode 0 is typically me reading the front matter that I have to legally put out there and all the warnings and brief discussion and all that crap. So I'm just going to get on with that. Copyright 2025 by Beth Curry, all rights reserved. No part of this publication may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means, including photocopying, recording, or other electronic or mechanical methods without prior written permission from the publisher, except as permitted by Canadian and U.S. copyright law. This is a work of nonfiction, my truth as I lived and remember it. Some names and details have been changed for privacy. Some conversations are reconstructed from memory because trauma doesn't come with transcripts, and conversation with others involved. As they remember things, I simply do not. I've captured the emotional truth of what happened. Dedication. I feel like a cactus. It's prickly. That's to protect itself, because once a year, it gets this really beautiful bloom. It's worth it if you can stand it the rest of the time. For BC and NW, for teaching me what real love looks like, for continuing to love me fiercely and without question, and for allowing me to heal and grow. For CK, who paid the ultimate price for using his voice without apology, and for PB, who never gave up, and for continuing to be a voice for mental health. For my friends and family who stuck around, even when they may have been confused and wondered what was wrong with me. And for anyone reading this who may be surviving silently. So at the start of this book, kind of similar to season 2 and my last book, The Weight of Truth, I included 4 kind of escalating fair warnings. They started out with a heads up about profanity and uncomfortable truths and moved through the content warnings about trauma and abuse and dark thoughts and all that jazz, and then end with me basically calling you a masochist with poor decision-making skills if you're still here. The warnings get progressively more confrontational from, this isn't for you if you want rainbow puppy unicorn farts, to I respect your commitment to poor choices. If you've made it through my previous work, you know the drill. This book discusses suicidal ideation and violence and trauma and the ways that we kind of disappear ourselves to stay safe. It's not gentle at all. It uses the F word liberally, and it will challenge popular narratives about healing. And I won't read those warnings, but consider yourself warned 4 times. Now, talking about my dedication, the cactus metaphor hits different when you really sit with it. We live in a culture that celebrates constant blooming. Constant, be your best self at all times, shine your light, radiate positivity. But what about the 11 months when the cactus is just surviving? Just being prickly and conserving water in the desert. I think there's something kind of profoundly honest about acknowledging that most of life isn't the bloom, right? Most of life is the protection and the conservation and the careful management of resources. The escalating warnings that I give, they're fascinating from a psychological standpoint, I guess. They're kind of doing double duty here. Yeah, sure, that they are genuine content warnings, but they're also kind of a filtration system. Each warning is progressively more confrontational, like I said, almost daring the reader to stay. So, it would be like watching natural selection happen in real time. But by warning number 4, calling out those terrible decision-making skills, that's the brilliant reversal happening, I think. The warnings themselves kind of become a test of readiness, not for content, but for the mindset shift that's required to actually hear what I am going to share. There is this phenomenon in trauma psychology called trauma bonding through disclosure. Don't know if anyone's ever heard of that, but when someone tells you up front that they're going to make you uncomfortable, they're going to make you challenge your ideas and, whatever, there's this paradoxical trust that develops. It's like saying, I respect you enough to tell you that this is going to hurt. If you compare that to typical self-help approaches of this will be gentle and affirming, which often leaves people feeling gaslit when the work gets hard, not the same thing. The dedication that I wrote to those who stuck around even when they may have been confused speaks to something that we don't talk about enough, and that's how trauma doesn't just affect the person experiencing it, it ripples out a lot. Friends and family become these secondary characters in a story they don't fully understand. They're trying to love someone who's simultaneously there and not there. That confusion isn't a bug, it's a feature of loving someone through their healing. The last line, for anyone reading this who may be surviving silently, there is a whole conversation there about the difference between surviving and living. We've gotten really good at teaching people how to survive trauma, breathe through it one day at a time, find your coping mechanisms. But survival mode was never meant to be permanent. And at some point, survival itself becomes the cage. The rainbow puppy unicorn farts line, it might make people laugh, but it's pointing to something serious. And that's the babying of healing. The wellness industry has packaged recovery into these digestible, Instagram-worthy moments. But real healing, real voice finding, it's messy and it's profane, and it sometimes requires saying things that make people deeply uncomfortable, including yourself. And what strikes me most is the honesty about destruction, destroying everything you thought you knew about yourself. We're so focused on building ourselves up and adding layers and becoming more. But sometimes healing means demolition, like absolute demolition. Sometimes finding your voice means acknowledging that the voice you've been using wasn't yours at all. It was just an echo of what what kept you safe, right? So welcome to season 3, I'm done being polite about what it actually takes to come back to life. And that's it, really short episode here, episode 0. I will be reading chapter 1 in the next episode. Until then, please remember all the episodes of Unbound are free. If you want to support the production costs, you can find me on Ko-fi, but there's never any obligation. This content will always be free because barriers to healing shouldn't be financial. There is a Facebook group. I will be there if anyone wants to talk about this, and all links and info are in the show notes. And I will see you in episode 1.
Thanks for listening to Unbound with Beth Curry. Join the conversation in the Facebook group or visit author.bethcurry.com. Want to support the show? Head to ko-fi.com/unbound podcast. Until next time, stay unbound.